Good evening. I'm meteorologist Ted Keller, and still front and center is powerful Hurricane Erin. We see the visible satellite here. I took this a few hours earlier, so we got a full disk without the sun setting over here. And I also did it because look at the eye right there. And it just so happens that goes east. Goes is the geostationary satellite. There's a goes east and there's a goes west. So goes east looks over the eastern and central U.S. for the most part, while goes west looks over the Pacific and the western U.S. But it just so happens that Erin is right in a place that is right underneath the satellite, so the eye shows up real clear right there. Erin has 110 mile per hour winds at this hour, making it a major hurricane. We'll take a look at the infrared satellite loop of powerful Erin, which is also a large storm, meaning its width, where the tropical storm or hurricane force winds are located, is pretty substantial. So when you have something this large, it's going to produce a lot of waves, and we'll cover that in a minute. I also wanted to emphasize on this satellite image, in case you didn't realize that there's two things we look at. Look at the top of the storm. You'll notice that the clouds are actually rotating clockwise, contrary to what you might believe about low pressure areas, right? And then the center of this is definitely going counterclockwise. So that's the sign of at least a sustaining, if not intensifying, hurricane when you have air moving out of the top faster than it's being put into the bottom. You're going to get at least a lowering of pressure, or at the very least a steady pressure with that storm. And the second thing is when you see these colors here, the black and the red, even sometimes the white, is temperature, and then we equate that to the height of the cloud. So these thunderstorm bands in the inner wall are very, very intense as this hurricane continues to turn now a little bit more to the north, and even now the last couple of frames a little bit more toward the northeast, which is right on par with the forecast. As a matter of fact, here's the latest from the Hurricane Center. Major hurricane at 5 p.m. Wednesday, that's Eastern time. The M here indicates it'll be a major storm until it goes to hurricane status, and then eventually storm status, and ends out over the open Atlantic by early next week. So quite a bit of distance traveled, but in the end, not very many areas of land affected by this, except as I'll show you here. Now, this is one way to look at this. This is the forecast wave height. So here's Raleigh, North Carolina. Here's Columbia, South Carolina. So we're talking about the Carolina coast right here. And these wave heights are forecast by the computer models. This is valid at 2 a.m., right when it's just about parallel, I guess you could say, with the North Carolina coast. And if you look at this, the wave heights in the center of this storm are 40, 50, 55 or 55 feet high. Pretty amazing. But if you just look at coastal areas of North Carolina, it looks like you're looking at about a 20 to 25 foot wave height possible with this storm. So that's why the rip currents and the waves are considered dangerous. So people were actually partially evacuated, I think, from part of that area. There is a tropical storm warning that runs from central New Jersey all the way down to just about covering all the coast of North Carolina and everything in between. So thankfully, this storm is doing what it was supposed to do, which is start to turn back out to sea, and its impacts, while not insignificant, are by comparison nothing, of course, when compared to a landfall. Now, let's look at the tropical Atlantic over the next 7 days. There are two areas worthy of watching. This area here, which is forecast to move on a similar track to Erin, except more out to sea. Again, when I say forecast, there's no actual storm here. This is just where they think one might form, and we're looking at this as a 40 to 60% chance of tropical storm formation, but it curves back out over the sea. If this holds up, Bermuda right here, which Erin is kind of threading the needle between Bermuda and the U.S., would be more at risk if something were to develop and if it were to hold up. And then way out to the southwest of the Azores, we have another area right there. Now, these storms, Erin and this potential storm, are both curving back out over the Atlantic rather rapidly in their movement, or in their total track, I guess you could say, their lifetime. And here's why. Here's the EPS 500 millibar mean. This is valid on Saturday, and I think it's in the morning I took this. And you'll notice we have a really healthy shortwave moving through the northern plains and the Great Lakes. So there's a cold front coming in behind that, and I'll show you the effects of that. That'll be really nice. But I want you to notice that the upper level winds that steer hurricanes out here are all blowing in a way that really send these storms at least slowing them down and probably curving them back to the north and to the northwest. If I look at Monday's exact same chart, you'll notice that the upper level winds out here are definitely out of the southwest. So storms that would approach this area here would definitely get caught up in this and would turn this way. Again, no storm is forecast yet. It's just an area to watch. And again, this can't be emphasized enough. This is a really unseasonal shot of cool air that's coming in, and we'll highlight that in a minute. And then finally, this is issued on Tuesday, but I'll show it to you again. This is just the long-range 2 and 3 week forecast for the tropical Atlantic. So generally speaking, the 27th through the 2nd, there's this area out here that I showed you on that last graph that kind of tacks on to the end of the 7-day graph I just showed you. So that marks with that second area. And then generally this is expected to grow and expand. Now, does anybody know whether that same recurvature will occur week 3? No idea. Just letting you know. Well, the heavy rain hazard here is really pretty limited over the next couple of days. This is a day 3 through 7 breakdown of heavy rain forecast areas. So for the next couple of days, it doesn't look too bad in any particular area. In fact, no area over the next few days has anything above a slight risk. It's all marginal risk of flash flood guidance being met. So again, for the next couple of days, while there will be rain areas, nothing is going to be too crazy. Now, I do want you to pay close attention to this. This is kind of an ongoing thing. This area here will be on the 23rd, this area on the 24th, and then this whole area here, the 27th or 23rd through the 27th. So there's some pretty good rain, especially here, that'll be developing through that period late in the month of August. There are also patches in the southeast and in the northeast. You can follow the progression, 24th and then the 24th through the 25th, kind of going up through the heart of New England. And going out even more than that, this is day 8 through 14. So you start seeing a slight risk of not severe, but heavier rains, and then a moderate risk in the core of Oklahoma on the 28th. So we are starting to see that is actually an interesting area. And you start getting those sometimes, especially in the month of September, where you get these stalled fronts and then you get rain bands that form along the end of the stall front and along any disturbances that are coming out of the jet stream. So that's what's causing that there. Now, here's the 7-day rain forecast. Now, keep in mind, this is really skewed toward the end of the 7 days. So if today is Wednesday, so we're talking about probably Sunday, Monday, Tuesday in that time frame. But you're seeing some 4-inch totals around Dodge City and through parts of the Front Range of the Rockies there in Colorado and even parts of New Mexico. So that's something to keep in mind. For severe weather, I'm pleased to report that the overall risks are pretty low. These are marginal risks, level 1 out of 5, and they are widely scattered along this front that's still making its way through the south. And in the return flow side of this high pressure system, we're starting to get some instability. A lot of that is actually up in Canada, the worst of it. And again, when this says Wednesday, it's considered day 1 today, and this actually goes through 7 a.m. CDT on Thursday, but Montana, North Dakota. And then we have a progressive second front that's going to be moving through. So here's the forecast for Thursday. Again, the lowest risk, but there's always room for a slight risk to probably be issued to fine-tune this tomorrow, perhaps. And then on Friday, the front continues to move. Still a marginal risk, lowest out of the 1 through 5 rating from the UP down through Minneapolis, the core of Iowa, and back into around Cheyenne. And then that supercell index I like to look at. This is week 2, August 27th through the 2nd. Pretty minimal, really. Again, perfectly in line with what you would expect this time of year, with the actual probabilities pretty low. In other words, we don't see any large spread like deep reds in here. And front range activity almost exclusively. That's the result of several fronts that will be moving through and stabilizing this air through the Great Lakes, the northern plains, the part of the Corn Belt, and the Northeast for the next several weeks to come. So here's the visible satellite loop where you can see Erin very, very clearly visible moving like this eventually. So that's good news. We do see some thunderstorms erupting here south of a frontal band. I'll show you where that's located in a minute. This is really nice air here. A little cloudy around Indiana and Ohio. but just cumulus clouds are developing in the field back behind. These are what we would call fair weather cumulus clouds for the most part. Usually, and in the summer when high pressure moves in, you get those, but they're capped, so the clouds never develop beyond the cumulus stage. Here is this 500 millibar flow. You can clearly see Erin. You can also see that Erin is affecting the winds around that storm. So we're seeing, and this is talked about on Monday, kind of a north to northeasterly flow across this part of the world, and it is helping to drive some of that slightly cooler and drier air down south. But it's only going to have so much effect. It's not going to be completely successful in fronts this time of year. Good luck trying to get into the Gulf of Mexico. They usually don't make it. The center of the dome of high pressure is indicated here, right around the four corners. Take a look at a surface map. Haven't looked at this in a while. There's the Erin being analyzed there. Here's one cool front here. It's kind of stalled through northern Arkansas and Tennessee. Here's a second one that'll be forming and moving slowly through the upper Midwest, as you saw, kind of reflected in that severe weather forecast. At 5 o'clock Central Daylight Time, temperatures are only in the 60s in parts of New York State, even a couple of 50s showing up there. Meanwhile, very cool and calm air here, 70s showing up in Michigan and Ohio and Indiana, and 80s are still prevalent from Minnesota and North and South Dakota down into Missouri. I live in Springfield. We still had a 91-degree high, but it beats the 99 we had the other day. And yeah, the front is right in here, so that's about as far south as I think that particular front's going to go. The heat advisories are scattered all over the place on the return flow side of that high in the Dakotas and Montana, through much of Nevada, through a lot of the interior of California and parts of Oregon, and then split again south of the front in Arkansas and parts of Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. And behind my picture here, there is also a heat advisory right around the Miami metropolitan area. Let's take a look at the temperature profiles here for the next couple of days. So today is Wednesday, so here's Thursdays. The shading is not the actual temperature, but the departure from normal. So these are all below normal readings right here, where the greens and blues show up, above normal readings where the orange, yellow, and even red shows up. So you can see the effects of this first front, especially in the northeast. Look at that. And then look ahead to Saturday. Look at this big, huge area, very abnormally cool air with high temperatures. Those are the single numbers you see at the cities. So Minneapolis, St. Paul will only reach 69 degrees on Saturday. And it looks like Fargo will only get to 67 degrees. Meanwhile, it'll be 92 in Springfield, which is a little bit above normal, but again, not as bad as it's been lately. And then if we go ahead to Monday, skipping ahead, we see a large chunk of the country with below normal temperatures, and really the only abnormally hot spot by early next week will be in parts of interior Washington and Oregon. And finally, the 6 to 10 day temperature forecast does show a really high confidence. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's an 80% chance right there that that's a confidence level, 80%. That's a horrible 80%. Anyway, 80% chance that they're right, that this is going to be a below normal area covering really probably about 3/4 of the United States. And finally, on the precipitation side of that same forecast, remember we talked about these rains in parts of Oklahoma, usually stalled fronts interacting with upper level disturbances moving across, out of the Rockies are what caused these above normal precipitation areas. And that's certainly reflected. That's the Tuesday through Saturday, so it's 6 to 10 days. So that doesn't even begin until 6 days from now, obviously. So again, a wet belt there from Colorado through Oklahoma and parts of the panhandle of Texas. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.